Meantime, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris over the past week or so attempting to brace the nation for even higher energy costs. That's right, higher than what we've seen already if Russia invades Ukraine. The strong economic sanctions that would be imposed by the United States and its allies could prompt even more price hikes here. Listen to this.
Defending democracy and liberty is never without cost. I will not pretend this will be painless. There could be impact on our energy prices.
These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued.
So the question, of course, is how everyday Americans are going to be impacted by this, and it could be really substantial. We've seen gas prices rise over 40% in the last year or so as it is. I want to take it up with House Intelligence, Appropriations, and Budget Committees member, Congressman Chris Stewart. Congressman, good to be with you. We're watching oil prices continue to rise on these tensions. They were up again today, creeping closer in the 90s towards that $100 mark. Americans are really struggling, not just with inflation across the board, but with these high energy prices. And here you've got the president and the vice president knowing that if they impose these harsh sanctions on Russia because our imports are up and because oil is a global market, we are going to see even higher prices. I mean, in some ways I look at this and I say they need to impose the sanctions, but they know that they can't impose the sanctions. It's a very difficult situation.
Well, it is, and the president has left himself in such a vulnerable and a weakened position. Oh, my gosh. Think about what he's done. The very first thing he did when he came to office was demonize the oil and gas industry. He pressures financial institutions not to work with them, not to loan them money. He cancels the Keystone Pipeline. He cancels oil and gas exploration here in the West and in northern Alaska. And he makes us from a nation that was a net exporter of oil and gas and energy to having to go beg to NATO to bring in oil and gas here in the United States. And as you said, a result is the price of oil doubling, the price of gas up 40 to 50%, when inflation is already hurting the poorest among us and working class Americans. And this is going to make it much, much worse. And this final point, I think this is so important. If you want to hurt Russia, then drive the price of energy down. It's by far their largest export. If you want to help them, drive the price of energy up, which is what this president has done over the last year.
You bring up such an amazing point, because that really is true. When we saw oil prices plunge to $25 a barrel, we were choking OPEC countries. We were choking Russia. Under President Trump, our production was up to #1. And now here we are at the 11 million barrels a day, roughly, barrel mark. That's our production in the United States. It's down significantly. And that's roughly where Russia's production is, too. So we are jockeying for this #1 position. And in my opinion, it's no coincidence, rather, that we're sort of getting into it with Russia here when it comes to energy.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Once again, it's going to hurt every American, but those who can afford it least, it's going to hurt the most, which ironically, at the same time, this president greenlights Nord Stream 2, which what does that do? It makes Germany and the rest of Western Europe more and more dependent on Russian oil and gas. It makes Russia stronger. And look, again, he has weakened himself over the last year. The previous president, two observations on that. Number one is Vladimir Putin was afraid of the previous president. He didn't even threaten this type of activity, and he was weakened by the previous presidents and their policies on oil and gas and driving that down. Both of those things are exactly the opposite right now, and we're seeing the outcome of that. And if he really does, and by the way, I would argue that he already has begun the invasion. I mean, whether it's cyber attacks or now these peacekeepers, this is a slow motion train wreck.
I would say that too. I mean, the seeds are set. No, the actual invasion literally hasn't happened yet. But this started last week. All the seeds were set. And as a matter of fact, we have reports that now 190,000 troops are on the border. So these numbers continue to rise, Congressman. And of course, we're watching how everything plays out here. You know, it was in 2014 that Putin annexed Crimea under President Obama and then Vice President Biden. But you're right, with President Trump, he was very quiet, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's just been apparent for months that he was going to do this. I mean, heavens, he brought troops as far away as our border with North Korea. Just today, he's pre-positioned fighters and other air assets there. As a former Air Force pilot, I keep my eye on that. If this doesn't go, then, I mean, it'll be because he's changed his mind, not because he'd never intended to do it.
Right. Congressman Chris Stewart, good to see you tonight, sir. Thank you.